this meeting of the Academic Committee to order. At this time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda for this meeting,
Okay.
July 28th, 2021.
Thank you, and I will second it since there are just two of us here. So all those on the committee in favor of the agendas, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
That's 2-0. Do we have any public comments, Molly?
No, ma'am.
Okay, no public comments. Then we move into the approval of the June 23rd, 2021 committee meeting minutes.
I move we approve the committee meeting minutes from June 23rd, 2021.
Excellent, and I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 2-0. Okay, now we get down to the presentation today. Before we get started, Mr. Mel Campbell, you were not online yet when Karen McKenzie was introduced. Karen is in her new capacity as Director of Teacher and Learning with the focus on the secondary programming. So we want to welcome Karen to the meeting today. Yay!
All right, Karen, welcome aboard. Yes, you are a vital entity in this highly esteemed program we have going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I enjoy what I do.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Okay, so also attending our meeting today for our viewers, and in case they can't see the screen, it is being broadcast by the county channel. We have Miss Ingrid Boatwright, Mr. Earl Campbell, and by telephone, Miss Wendy Cartledge, in addition to Dr. Mary Stratos. So, Dr. Stratos, would you like?
You didn't mention Patricia Frederick.
I didn't?
No.
Oh man! And Tricia Frederick. Thanks for catching that, Mel. I guess because we had been chatting earlier.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Thanks, Mel. Okay, so now we are moving on with our meeting, and I will turn it over to Dr. Stratos.
So, Ms. Mercado, if you could pull up the PowerPoint document first, the one I believe it only has 4 slides. Thank you, Ms. Mercado. Appreciate it.
I think it's the other one. Yeah.
Thank you. So, yep. Appreciate it right there. And this is just a quick, board members, if you remember a prior presentation by Ashley Hutchinson regarding the framework looking for early childhood. We're trying to use a similar template. I want us to recognize that going forward in the next 3 to 5 years, we at ISD, Ashley has been working very closely myself with United Way at looking at the development of a collective impact model to increase family awareness for early childhood education. And so I just added this in so we could see that we're trying to keep a similar model going across the board of what we're working with our schools. So what we do with our early childhood, the same areas of partnership, communication, standard-based instruction are going to be across the board. It's just not an isolated model. If we can go to the next slide, Ms. Mercado. And I recognize that at this slide, it does appear to have more text because on the PowerPoint, these would slide in. I'd like us to note that in the next 3 to 5 years, if we looking forward for us as a school system, what are the areas that to look at that we would focus at. One would be fine and performing arts, literacy, math, science, and technology, developing students who to be part of a global society, growing and understanding our part in history and the impact of others' history on us, and also the concept of developing our students as well as our educators in mind and body. There's a quick little narrative supporting each one of these points. And Ms. Mercado, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So here it actually builds on a little more of the language using the same footprint that you're familiar with from Ashley Hutchinson, and looking at instruction to find out that we want to provide differentiated professional development to support our learners, increasing strong community partnerships. And what you also notice within the narrative, I've identified the strategic plan areas that are supported by this. So SA would be student achievement, TAQ would be teacher quality, attainment and quality. SC is school climate. GT is gifted and talented. And what you may see coming up this year being added to one of our goals in our strategic plan is actually putting in a goal for parenting. So I'm just laying ideas ahead of time. So what you may be seeing come spring at a board meeting. If we look at strong community partnerships, we've just had a recent meeting with the Women's League of Voters. We've made a commitment that this is not a one-shot type of meeting. We're looking at having a stronger partnership. They'll be speaking to our principals on September 8th and trying to set up them, and I'm using them as an example, that we will be meeting with you 3 times a year. What are we doing? Are we doing what we said we were doing? Are we meeting the goals that we said we would do? And that's a model that we will be doing with our community partners. Focus on standard-based curriculum and instruction. You'll hear more about that, how that was researched, and the idea of where we're going with ESSER funding. Data-driven practices. You are familiar already with Performance Matters. A large amount of work is going out to a train-the-trainer model. That training will be executed on August 3rd. Principals will be trained on August 4th. We are also seeking to train our assistant principals as well. And again, family partnerships. Our work cannot happen without the work of figuring out a way, not us, you coming to us, but us opening the doors and going to you. We've even had conversation of a parenting bus, but not just for early childhood, but utilizing that bus really to promote what we do in schools. So this was just a quick view of thinking of where we're going for 3 to 5 years. And Ms. Mercado, we can go to the Word document at this time. Do we have any questions on the PowerPoint slides or input?
Please, if you have questions, just speak out. Are there any questions at this time?
No.
None?
So the document,
Mel, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Continue, Dr. Stratos.
yes, ma'am. So the document you have in front of you was basically research work completed to support
The brand money right there.
Requests that you'll see later on in this document for ESSER to go into our ESSER 3 application. And I know Ms. Crosby did a presentation at our last board meeting, and she has another update coming forward. So what you don't have on in front of you are the notes that I have in front of me of where we are for when the research was completed on this. So when we're talking about systems change, the first item is that idea of extending learning opportunities for schools from 6.5 hours to a 7.5 hour day, or extending our learning into what we call also our 2.0 model. The next item that you see in front of you is a need for additional instructional coaches at targeted schools. This has been put into our general fund requests. as well as in our ESSER funding. And if you'd like, I could forward this to you as a document through the board office so that you could have access to all of the hyperlinks that are tied into these documents. So you could also see the support research for these recommendations. If we go to the next page, Ms. Metcalvo. What this talks about are the 6 steps for coaching. It kind of gives you a wide idea and the framework work that we are working already with our coaches. We started module training this spring. We are continuing that training upcoming this academic school year. It also provides you some reading forecasts and data of students who, in math and in reading of the impact of having coach where they were as a result of NWEA. That is the next page. Thank you. Showing the learning lost, and that's the national data that is not specific to Beaufort County School District. But it kind of gives a why, right? We have to address, and we are addressing, loss of learning or learning loss is the language that's utilized. We need to build the capacity of our educators to not only make up last year, but I think the language I want us to start thinking going forward is accelerating learning for our children. How are we building that prior standard to the current grade level standard and pulling that together to accelerate our children's learning? If we can go to page 4. Item 3, no, thank you. Item 3 on this page, basically, I'd like to share that we're looking at having adding to 4 pilot schools working with Ashley, developmentally appropriate play included into our pre-K and kindergarten. We also recognize during the closure of 19 months, children not being in school, yes, we have to learn language, we have to learn our phonemic awareness and increase those skills. But we also have to be able to have children who are having the opportunity to understand interaction, teamwork, and working with one another. So we were trying to give our kids an opportunity not only to be reading, writing, and arithmetic, but actually to condition back into the school setting. I want us to recognize that. That idea or practice is actually being discussed to be part of after school as well, to just give our children a little exhale before we continue our learning day. Item 2 on this page, Roman numeral curriculum instructional model. This is something you're very familiar with, that is the research tied to PLCs. I do want to make a correction on this page. If you look at right above Roman numeral 2, I left out the statistic of the poverty rating. It is 13.8 for 2019. That would have been the close, and I'm pointing to the screen as if you could see me. But it would be the statement right after with a poverty rating of, it would be 13.8 for South Carolina. And that would have been for 2019. If we can go to page 5.
Mary, can you tell me what exactly does that mean, that 13.8?
So that was an analysis conducted from, I want to say statistics.com, as also tied to the educational performance citation that I added, most educated states, for the amount of families who are receiving government assistance. And it fluctuated from 2016 to 2019, and it went down actually to 2011 from 13.8 on my citation here to 14.8, 15.6, and it fluxed back down into the 13. So it seems the range of the poverty index for South Carolina, identifying families with government assistance, not free and reduced lunch, was just about 15% was an average for the South Carolina.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. On page 5, we started a conversation looking at having a closer look at our math standards. If you look at item 2, we started that this summer. with curriculum writing plans, readdressing Rubicon, a closer alignment to our performance and from our diagnostic data, because our other data is still embargoed, but also providing some flexibility to our schools within Rubicon. So when when the standardized testing is released, they can actually do some unique readjustment within their own pacing of their schools. Another item I want us to recognize on item 3, a requirement we're going forward are for writing plans. We will have 3 formative assessments this year in the area of writing, and there'll be an expectation of our schools to provide a writing plan at the end of September.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to have people trained to score those writing samples, those writing prompts? Yeah. So people that don't necessarily know the student, that the papers are divided up, and so
yesterday during our division meeting at length, we came to conversation to say, first, obviously, we will be training our literacy coaches, from our literacy coaches for them to roll out to work with the educators in the building. Our goal is that we will be able to have 2 scorers when it comes to having our writing prompts. And we started on that discussion with Melissa in the room, but we can't go with scoring as you just put forward, Mrs. Robant, without that training of what the rubric looks like. So yes, that is being embedded and that process is starting.
Great, thank you.
Yes, and just to share, the goal is the first writing prompt to be a full score, and then within your writing plan, you should be able to chunk out what you're planning to happen instructionally within the school. And then obviously the next 2 writing prompts would be markers to see where you're at. Are we improving or not? And it's a system that we haven't had here at Beaufort. It is one that we are looking to put in place this academic school year. Again, if you remember the prior visual on the PowerPoint, item 4 is formative assessments. There's a recommendation for NWA, a parent access. So parents could really have a closer look that from the time that this went into print, and I did the research, my understanding is NWA may allow this to be for free. If not, it was at a cost of $1 per student within the district. We have on the bottom of page 5, growing and continued development on social emotional needs. You know, we've used Panorama in the past. We will continue with Panorama this academic school year. Also bringing in school mental health counselors. We are working with Hope, and I forgot the name, and I do apologize, of the other counseling group. They're actually out of Hilton Head. So they have counseling that accessibility for our students, because again, there's going to be a transition for children as they come back into the buildings. Item 7 on page 6. Talks about items of us putting interest in with regard to gifted and talented. Working out means to have greater accessibility. One of the items we spoke as a team yesterday is looking at Dimension B, utilizing iReady. So that type of data will be uploaded into Performance Matters because it can be a second identifier. The state approved iReady as a diagnostic tool that they also identified them as one of the measures or qualifiers for GT. In item 7, I just wanted to bring forward that this past year we've looked at putting in pilot, and they're going to start this year. It's actually 2 accelerated models at the elementary. I've shared that with you before. That is part of the ESSER request, looking at Bluffton L and Mossy Oaks. And then we're seeking to add 2 more schools in this accelerated model of identifying our children earlier, providing additional academic support as well as professional development for the school, and being able to stretch our kids, and I mean that in figurative language, in order to help them meet gifted qualification. That's one of the strategies that we're looking at. It's also aligned with our strategic plan. Item 8, and one of the things that Ms. McKinney has brought to the table as a request, which wasn't in this print, is an extension of DBQ document-based questioning at the secondary level. So we will be seeking to add that to the social studies courses so we can have greater accessibility, and again, emphasis onto that writing initiative. If we looked at it, level item 9, it goes into our Read to Succeed, as well as our CISA camp. We want to keep these going through the academic school years, but my goal would be is that we're running 2 CISA camps, not just one. So that I don't have students, or we don't have students who are commuting either from north of the Broad to south of the Broad for a camp or vice versa. I'd like to see these opportunities broaden. So that was one of the requests in ESSER as well. If you go to page 7, you'll see that we already started acting on these initiatives. A dive in for fun for summer was a model that was utilized for our students this year. A lot of hands-on science during the summertime, our summer school. We increased our opportunity for course and credit recovery. Also with an adjustment that was conducted to the administrative regulation 43 for grading that allowed the amendment that we put in place for the middle school for this year, seeking to allow our middle school subject to the grading model that is used a little more accessibility than if they had failed 2 core courses, we were allowing them, if they failed more than 2 core courses, to attend summer school. And if that remediation was completed appropriately, these students would have the opportunity for promotion. I have a reference here to your organizational chart. Ms. McKinsey is evidence of one of the new add-ons too. On bottom of page 7 addresses a virtual program, and that we did receive the state waiver. I do want to work with Low Country Virtual. At this time, we purchased 100 seats. We have 87 seats filled for grades 6, 7, and 8. We are still processing a handful more applications. And informally, we have received some students or families actually who were attending virtual homeschool outside of the district. We have been able to, that I know of, or 3 families have come back in at the middle school to Beaufort County. So that's like the research component and some of the why of what you'll see on the upcoming page 10. And I want us to recognize that this is still in draft mode. When presented to the board, the second column, I will undo the truncation that happened in part of the descriptions. The first column on this presentation actually is a priority. Because this wasn't a template, it was very difficult to resort it. I'll have it re-typed in Excel. So it'll be by priority for the board presentation. But if you want to take a moment to review and any questions on the ideas.
That's a bunch of stuff on there that I've got questions about, but the first category mapping with the last category, sometimes I'm concerned with why.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we look at item number 1, is that right? Why is it number 1 and why is it number 20, Mr. Campbell?
No, why is it? That's Career Technical Education Welding Simulator.
Yes, sir.
Why is that addressing learning loss?
Actually, it's a hands-on opportunity for students that they have not had. And the simulator will also give a little more experience to students because we have had a drop in the amount of opportunities students have actually had in the classroom.
So what were your choices, Dr. Stratos? I think this is a state form, correct?
Yes,
That you
yes,
have to,
it is. It is a federal.
Okay, federal form for the money. So, because I see where it says choose from the drop down.
Yeah.
So what were the other choices? I see
Learning-
facilities. Yeah.
Learning loss, facilities, social, emotional, professional development.
So all of these things, anything that you requested had to fit in one of those categories for use of
Yes.
the ESSER money.
Yes, with regard to this.
You put them in a category that you thought would be applicable. Right now, it's up to the feds to decide whether these things are addressing it or not, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. That's
Yes,
why.
sir.
That's why, I was concerned about it.
Yes, sir. So we have a limited selection on this template.
Yeah. I got you.
Okay. So, Ms. Medcalvo,
Almost anything that is involved with student learning, you placed on a learning loss.
yes, yes, because I would have wanted to put in student achievement if that was a choice, but it didn't exist.
Okay.
And Ms. Romine, thank you for the point of clarification, ma'am.
And can I ask, on the chart, there's priority number 8 and priority number 10. Can you differentiate those for me? They say the same thing. When I read the rationale, one seems to be instructionally based and one seems to be behavioral or emotional support based. Is that the difference between those two walkthroughs?
The answer to that is yes. So there's
Okay.
2 points to bring forward, and I'll let Ms. McKinsey even speak on the first. But when we look at item number 10, that was a same data collection classroom walkthrough model through learning, science, LSI. We were looking into developing, how we developing that classroom cohesiveness so I could have trust in going forward at learning. But we also recognize from the point of this going into print that it was too many initiatives to start the academic school year. So item number 10 is being put on hold. Or item number 8 is an upcoming initiative. If Karen, do you want to elaborate on the rigor walkthrough?
Yes, I've met with them several times. The positive point about the rigor walkthrough for us is it allows us to speak a common language, and it focuses our observations on student achievement. What are the students doing within the classroom? Kind of takes that pressure off of teachers having so many walkthroughs because they will quickly learn the walkthroughs are centered on student achievement. Also, they do a great job of allowing us to get that data back from our walkthroughs and do a really strategic review of what are we seeing, how can we improve, what areas are our weaknesses, what areas are our strengths. So all of that is going to be really instrumental in helping us improve those classroom practices.
And the goal is that, as Ms. McKinsey put forward, that there's a commonality of practice. So we look at our partnering schools that we are looking to move forward. That when our executive directors and ourselves, when we go into schools, we have a commonality. I'm not using this school's model. It's a commonality within the school as well as those working with the schools.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Campbell?
yeah, I'm very concerned about that item now that you decide to drop 10 and focus on 8. And in my mind, as an educator and an old fart, I would think that you would focus more on 10 than 8 as an initial walkthrough to perhaps assess the climate of the classroom before your expectations, because I don't know what you expect to see if the climate's not there, and the content's probably not going to be there. So I don't see us putting 10 on the back burner in terms of that walkthrough. I don't see why they can't both be done at the same time in terms of the evaluation, but I really would expect that any coach or coaches that are involved in walking through and monitoring the relationship between the students and the teachers will be focused intently on the culture and the climate of the classroom.
Mrs. Roby, may I share?
Absolutely.
So if we note on earlier in the document on page 5, when I made mention of Panorama, our goal is that our teachers first start using the lesson plans that are tied with Panorama first, building more of that relationship into the classroom once we do the Panorama survey, have some lesson plans with ourselves at building, team activities and climate within the classroom, and then add to the next level of now saying, hey, let's give a little more professional development to our schools, and then bring in that next walkthrough tool. Since we had already started a commitment with Panorama, we're going to go into year 2. We were looking at that first resource to extend and then bring in other tools to build on it.
So that answers my question, but it still doesn't justify why you wouldn't do 10. In fact, they probably support why you should do 10 to make sure Panorama is effective. I don't, that's the way I'm thinking. Maybe I'm to be corrected.
Are there any questions on the instrument that's being used for the professional, for the walkthrough for instruction? Any specific, I don't know if you're using a specific instrument that has things that you're marking on, or if you're training the teachers to look for specific things, level of engagement.
Level of engagement, alignment of the strategy with regard to the standard, the activity that's being utilized. Okay, the alignment in that content as well. So we're not dismissing the climate component of the classroom. We want to be able to extend some of the tools that we have already and then build additional tools layer on top of that. It may be a bit much for teachers with the opening of school. Yeah. The goal is to roll out effectively at layers. So I understand the relationship between student and learner, teacher and learner, but we would try not to overload so we could effectively roll out initiatives.
Okay. Any other questions at this time?
I have a question.
Ms. Boatwright, yeah.
Chair Robine.
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about pre-K, but it's not on this list. How does that work in terms of funding? Because is that extended learning?
So the pre-K under ESSER 2, because this list here is driving to ESSER 3 application I have put a request in Mrs. Boatwright for funding for additional classroom supplies, including hands-on material, as well as reading material.
ESSER 2.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. And that came out of the meeting on April 28th with principals. It was driven very hard by Dr. Levan. Kept it in my pocket, then had conversation with Tanya. So that's where that funding, I'm looking to put the money from that into that developmental appropriate practice.
Well, good, because we've talked a lot about pre-K and how important it is, and I haven't seen anything where we're actually requesting funding. So it's good to know that it's actually in the ESSER 2. So I guess along those same lines, after listening to Ashley Hutchinson's presentation, where are the 4 pilot schools that are going to get the initial pre-K?
We haven't landed all that yet because we just started that conversation. We received very directly this week. I've received a green light. That was on Monday.
Okay.
All right.
And this is more a question of, I know that in my district and other areas, it's a question of space. We are quickly running out of classroom space.
And also the school leader, right? Will they be following on this? So we want a pilot to have that school leader as well, who will pick up the initiative. So it's not something that just stays on the side. So and working at that.
Fair enough. And then this is kind of a follow-on, Kath, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because it's all kind of in the extended learning. I'm really excited to see all this money going to extended learning and to pre-K, because I think we really have to expand, the timeline. As far as it says, the after school and whatnot, and then there's another separate item, which is for targeted schools. Again, so I don't know exactly how all that works out, because if one comes before the other, if they're two separate programs. But have we thought about, engaging more in some partnerships with organizations that are already working in the after-school space, as opposed to hiring a whole new system?
Well, we actually did do that during the summer with the Boys and Girls Club. At 2 of our schools, they did. So are you talking community groups or other educational entities?
Yeah, community groups. I can name the ones here locally that I know about on Hilton Head, like Island Rec Center, Boys and Girls Club. There's even, churches that provide after school care. Again, trying to maximize space and maximize efficiency. Because I read somewhere in that report that, some of the limitations are hiring staff. We have the money, can't find people to do it. And if there are people already doing it, can we, look into, can that be part of all of this proposal, or is that for another time?
I think it would be for another time. And let me share why, Mrs. Boatwright. If we're looking at right now on what we can work with and have some type of relationship at building the capacity first of our educators.
Everyone else see that?
It stopped. Are you frozen?
I'm pretty sure, because I don't think she would hold that pose.
Maybe
She's
the
frozen.
office froze again.
Oh,
Yep, I bet they went down.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
You froze for a while, Dr. Stratos.
Oh, did I come back?
Yeah, you're
You're
back
Okay,
now.
sorry.
You were mid answer.
So what I had shared was, if we look at utilizing or building the capacity of our educators first and taking the responsibility of our educators, those within BCSD, to address student academic achievement, then look at the next layer. We want to go out to the community and build that relationship, because right now, who's going to be held accountable for that student learning? The third party or BCSD?
TSD.
Yes, Mr. Campbell. And so, yes, it's a wonderful model to look at, grow at. But right now, our focus has to be more of a domestic policy than an international policy on academic achievement.
That's fine, and I'm good with that as long as it's not strictly a regional policy.
I recognize that at the root. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I think, let me just add something here. I think that Ms. Hutchinson makes regular visits to other sites that offer pre-K, and they have, I think she's done some training sessions for them and has a good dialogue with,
Yes.
excuse me, with the preschools. So that's something that certainly could be continued and expanded on a bit. If we're bringing in this new, I'm excited we're bringing in the new play aspect of, learning through play, and, hopefully some of the other educators and other preschool programs could benefit from some of our trainings as well, could attend. Maybe, I don't know if it's possible to invite them.
I am very open to others coming in as we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Mrs. Robert, we've worked very hard actually this year with Riverview Charter, rebuilding and resources for both. So we are, even with our district charter, we are very open, inviting now. Not that we hadn't been, but I think we're just opening the door a little more.
Okay. I saw Ms. Fidrick had a hand up, and then Mr. Mel Campbell.
Thank you. My question's actually for Ms. McKenzie. So, Ms. McKenzie, can you share with us all, how do you see that this, the instructional coaches is going to look different than it looked how we did it at the district before? What differences do you see that will make this maybe a more effective way of using coaches for increasing student achievement and teacher capacity?
I'm really excited about the new model that we're looking at for instructional coaches. One of the issue with coaching is you don't have a classroom. So you get pulled to a lot of different aspects within a building because of need. Right. And focusing this and really outlining what are the roles and responsibilities of that coach and what's the accountability for that coach to serve in that coaching role is critical for them to be able to do the job at hand. The work that we've done with Rose Backus for PLCs is going to be instrumental in changing what we do in classrooms and how coaches facilitate that. One of the things that the coaches have really worked hard on under Melissa Murray trying to get this done is what should a PLC look like? And we're trying to develop that common language across the district. So let's say you were to go into a PLC at Whale Branch. You should hear that same kind of discussion that they're having as you would have if you went into a school, say in Bluffton, at Bluffton Elementary. Those coaches are facilitating that same language among teachers, and that is centered on student achievement and student-centered learning. And that's new for us. What we've done previously with coaches is we said, hey, this is your role is to support teachers. But now we're giving them those tools and that training to really encourage the supporting of teachers in facilitating student-centered learning. So I think it's going to be transformative for our schools. And I'm really excited to get into some of those PLCs and see that facilitation of teachers digging into that data and letting that data inform those evidence-based strategies and that instruction. And then coming back to the table and saying, oh, how did we do? Let's look at it again, and making those adjustments. That's really hard for some teachers. As you know, I was an older teacher, so taught for many years, and you dig into, your craft, and I know what I'm doing. And it's hard to break away and peel away those layers of I know what I'm doing and I don't want to change. But I think this model is going to bring some severe change to our district. I'm really excited about it. And we know research tells us PLCs are important.
Right. I agree. The research does say that. And I think that the accountability portion for instructional coaches is key. I don't know if you remember, but a mere 2 years ago, instructional coaches was the $1 million chopping block that was going to happen for the budget.
I remember it very well.
Yes. And so the accountability, the data to show that, hey, this is the effect. What is the effect of instructional coaches? What data is supporting that, and what's the accountability of the instructional coaches? And we could not answer that 2 years ago. So,
and that's a hard question. You're right, Ms. Vidrich, to answer. And we did have trouble answering that question. And I tried on my own as a result of that because I enjoyed my job and wanted to keep it. So I tried very hard to hone in what is the impact we're making. And I could be a bulldog, because y'all know about things like that, and I could never put my finger on it.
That's right.
I knew we were having an impact, but where was it? And specifically, what was that impact? So that is why this system is so exciting, because we will see that impact now, and we will be able to have that accountability piece in place.
I'm happy to hear that, because I think that's crucial. And Dr. Stratos, for you to hear that, that's going to be one of the questions for sure is how are the coaches making a difference, and how can you prove it? So, thank you.
Mr. Mel Campbell?
Well, I don't know how to start, but I'm looking at this as more of the same. It's still within the box, and I'm not sure we're going to make any any necessary changes as if we remain in the box. I concur with Ms. Boatwright's suggestion that we ought to be considering a lot more outreach with the auxiliary institutions that are supporting the school children around the district, and we ought to tone in a little bit more on who they are, what they do, and what the service is. I give you an example of what I'm talking about. The summer school at Hilton Head that this summer, I don't know the numbers. I'm sure Dr. Stratus knows the numbers, but they weren't impressive to me. The number of students attending summer school at Hilton Head was not impressive, not reflective of the learning loss and the need. And dollar to dollar, I think we lost a lot of money or wasted a lot of money in a general run-of-the-mill, stay-in-the-box initiative. We sent the buses around. We sent the application out. We expected the children to show up for summer school. And, of course, they didn't. And I was talking to one of the churches, and their summer school, what they call summer camp program. And they're saying how they service 40 to 50 children. I said, gee, that would be a great opportunity to have a partnership with the quote experts of educating what they do versus, churches. They sometimes don't have people, particularly the black churches, who are expert at educating, but they're trying their darndest to get those children, but they do have the focus group. How do we get that focus group with educators? That ought to be something that we ought to be concerned about if, in fact, we're going to move the needle any. And I agree that the instructional coaches, if nothing else, they're going to grow the teachers. But I'm afraid at the risk of frustrating the teachers. The better I am, the less I'm able to apply it to the children who really need it, because I don't get those children to come, to attend. And that relationship is deteriorating more and more. So that's my concern. I mean, I can't knock sound educational principles, but I do understand that it's a different system of how we attract students to stay in the flow. With time changing quite a bit and our world changing, we have to do some things differently to educate.
Mr. Earl Campbell?
Yes, I have two questions. Do we know the number of students that did not attend summer school, and if they didn't, they would have to repeat the grade again this year, right? Thank you.
Mr. William Smith?
I share a lot of what Mr. Campbell just said, along with what Mrs. Ingers said as well, and more so that also I've had teachers, and I've also had parents who have felt that some of the coaches that they could be more effective in the classes, because what it seems like to come across is that we're pulling out that the district is pulling out the strongest teachers and getting them to use some of their methods to help and whatever coach that they are, and these could be teachers that we could have in classes strengthening students and being effectively and directly to a number of kids that they're serving continuously. So there are definitely have been some questions and some of effectiveness in what coaches are doing, and some concerns that I am aware of, and I have heard when it comes to also the component of coaches. And I think the more outreach we get towards the community, that can also help us get more actively engaged community members and involved what we're doing as a district as a whole. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, let's see. Mr. Smith, can you put your hand down, please, so I know that you don't have another one right now?
Yes, Madam Chair, if you give me a second, I will do just that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for giving me time to do it too. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, Dr. Stratos.
So with Mr. Campbell's question, our numbers for elementary, Mr. Earl Campbell, we have 597 students participating in elementary. My numbers for secondary will be coming in. I should be having my report from that hopefully on Monday, the final report, because that was a rolling as kids completed. They went off rosters at the secondary level for course credit recovery. So that report I should have by Monday. I have asked also to get a look at the amount of students who there would have been an impact that they may have been retained, especially at the third grade. We were down on internet today, so that's why I don't have those numbers to that level. I just wanted to share that, Mr. Campbell.
Ms. Boatwright?
Thanks. Okay, good. One other question I have. So this is, it was presented as the instructional services development. Will we see this isn't comprehensive of all the ESSER funding, right? This is just what's coming out of ISD. Are we also going to see additional funding requests from operations, from technology, other departments?
That I think we would have to direct to Mrs. Crosby.
Okay.
The purpose for myself, it was for ISD.
Were you given kind of a narrow, not narrow, but an ISD focus?
Yes, ma'am.
So.
Yes, ma'am. I know she is preparing a little more detailed account, but this was specifically for ISD recommendations.
Well, and to Mel Campbell's point, and when I was, I feel a little sense of urgency because this is due like August 24th. And I'm like, man, we got this chunk of money that the schools never thought they would get, and we could do. And all this stuff sounds good to me, and I don't understand I'm not a former educator. My parents both were. So I kind of understand a little bit about, all the professional development. That all sounds great. But I do think there's some opportunities here that, if we kind of back burner some stuff, maybe, in terms of we've got the parent surveys. But I do think that this is an opportunity to get the community involved so that they feel really good and excited about how we spent the money as well, which it's a little not harder to present, but if you're like, well, we've got this long-term plan for professional development, it's not as sexy as a partnership that's going to bring in more kids and do different things. So I have this, like, with technology and with some of our facilities, a sense of like, we got to come up with some great ideas, which there are some on here. I'm just, I guess what I'm following up on is my mention of school partnerships and different things. I understand that BCSD ultimately has responsibility, but are we looking hard at that right now when we've got this pot of money? It's kind of where I was going with that. That's where I landed, Kathy, on that.
Got it.
So if we also recognize that we tried when the grant is going to go forward to the feds, we recognize that we can provide the window broad enough. So if we look to have that as a growth pattern and after year one or year two, or even starting second semester, that when you look at utilizing the dollars for extended school day, nowhere does it say that it cannot be used that way. And no, it does lend the flexibility of contract services. That's one of the beauties when you do create a budget and you do go forward and keep growing. It's a living document. It's not just something that's stamped and done. Anything else on this page 10?
Ms. Boatwright, is your hand up again, or it just hasn't gone down yet?
Still up.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all
And I'm
right.
pushing all kinds of wrong buttons and things
I
are
know.
happening.
Yeah, great. Okay. So, Dr. Stratos, you want to proceed?
Ms. Mercado, page 12. This is basically an extension to the second slide in the PowerPoint at looking at some of the ideas of extending and actually replicating opportunities for the MedTech 7 MSA Magnet Schools Assistance Program grant. If we start at the very first quadrant on the arts, looking at utilizing our funds to deepen our arts-based schools, looking at building capacity of other schools on arts integration. Ultimately, a goal would be within the Hilton Head cluster is to really increase an arts integrated model there as well. Having had some conversation with school leadership. If we cross to the science and technology, again, this is an extension from the prior PowerPoint. Just the idea of increasing opportunities for our schools. I'd like us to look at bullet number 3 in that quadrant. Collaboration with the Department of Defense schools as well as the Veterans Affairs on how we can do some out-of-the-box funding to help teacher quality here in Beaufort. I've already attended 3 meetings. I have a follow-up meeting this coming week on the 4th to bring an executive summary review on an area of interest. What I'm trying to point at is if we build capacity outside for other funding to help build content areas well for educators, I recognize that not all of our educators have gone through a traditional model as I did with my undergraduate degree as an educator. I did content area as well as education. Not all our educators today take that pathway. So the goal is in this grant partnership with DOD is building better quality of our educators. Again, the building mind and body is extending learning from the mind and body. What would hold us from looking at developing in one of our clusters a sports medicine model for our career technical education programs. And again, the global society component, knowing ourselves, knowing our community and the outside community of how we grow. Page 14. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Stratos, can I just say some of those things that you just mentioned, I think if we took that, the idea of the extended school day, and instead of making the extended school day more of the same, to piggyback on what Mel said, we add, like a exploration, make it more interactive. Space exploration, that's a bad one, but
no, a good one actually.
Whales. I just met a gentleman today who's a researcher and has great presentations on whales, and some community people could come in, work with teachers kind of around theme-based programs that the kids would be excited to stay after school for an extended time. And while they're there, they're working on reading and writing and math, but it's more an explorative, more of a hook to get them excited about learning. I think oftentimes when we think of extending the school day, it's that drudgery, it's that more of the same, and anything, that could make it more exciting, like a 3-week theme based on, the moon or something, and the activities incorporated into that. I just to piggyback on what you were saying with these other ideas, in my mind, if we are able to extend the school day to increase participation in that, we have to have hooks. We have to have things that are exciting that the kids are like, yeah, I want to study that. That sounds real exciting.
Most definitely. It is an area of conversation we have had because more of the same medicine only gives you the same results.
Okay, Mr. Campbell?
I think Mr. Smith was ahead of me, but.
Oh, okay, I didn't see his, I can see you, I can't see Mr. Smith. Okay, Mr. Smith?
I was going to say I agree with you along the lines of basically a program like Starbase that have meaning, and they have a basically a learning component, and it's very strategic. I definitely do agree with that, because kids, I'm sure that sometimes they're like teachers, they're ready to go. So something that energizes them and makes them happy would be great, a great outlet to help them further educate them. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mal Campbell?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again my concern with us not building a district-wide culture as opposed to infrastructure where we end up redeveloping and refocusing on the staff, and they become better teachers for other places. Mainly because the culture here would not support, them as teachers. And so we have to work, I think, very hard on changing the idea of where we're going from a cultural standpoint. And to me, things like you guys were just discussing, in terms of after-school programs, etc., changes the culture of our process enough where teachers become, educated by the process as opposed to by other teachers who have gone through numerous processes. They're on site and understanding what we're doing and where we're going at the same time it's happening. So, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I do want the cart to be coming along as the horse is moving.
Any other comments? Okay. Dr. Stratos?
Page 14. Again, these are hyperlinks that provide support for the research. It's just a resource. It is a resource page. I know in the format that you have, you're not able to go into the documents. I recognize that, into those links. If we turn the page to page 15, this is a summary of what was submitted to the state on incremental goals for the upcoming academic school year. We were restricted to utilize data from the state's initiative of Rally, which is a data consortium that they have put together. Our plan was submitted on May 28th. It was a result of meetings with our principals, and I have added it into the document because it was built off of research that was conducted. So if you can go ahead, Ms. McDowell. And you could identify that you'll see that the goals correlate to what we also have in our strategic plan. First goal is addressing multilingual students. The second goal on page 17 addresses our students with disabilities. If you recognize after the goals, it actually gives a little detailed narrative of how these strategies address each of the tiers within the students' groupings. Page 18 addresses gifted and talented students. Many of these initiatives we've already had discussion on at. And again, you'll see if the document provides you access to support information. Gifted and talented continues from page 19 into page 20. If you go to page 21, pre-kindergarten. There were some additional language that was just cleaned up in here for the board presentation. So a few of the grammatical errors have been addressed in this draft. And again, I like, recognize that this is a draft and that's why we're having conversation, is to get feedback. And that was thunder and lightning out there. Yeah, I apologize for the distraction. Page 22, kindergarten. So if you could see, we have 10 goals in the state academic plan. The first 5 actually address from kindergarten, pre-K, are students with disabilities as well as multilingual learners. Goal 6 on page 23.
Can I ask a question about that one? What
Yes,
does it
ma'am.
mean we'll measure baseline data point at or above the 50th percentile?
So
That's because
first graders-
this is a June, oh, this is when they're entering into first grade? Okay.
So by June 3rd, yeah. So we are going to have that baseline data in June of 2022. This is how this was written. And then
So-
you use that as a landing pad going forward with this cohort of students.
Okay, so our goal then, so our kids that are in pre-K this year,
Next year, first grade, 60%.
next year will be first graders, so the goal is to have 50%, 65% of those will
Be at or above.
score at the 50th percentile in reading and math. Okay.
Yes. It continues, that goal 6 continues on to page 24. It was pretty extensive, to be direct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Because the idea with this plan was really a great amount of focus on the students who have not had contact and putting an emphasis into the younger years. Goal 7 is a collective goal for grades 2 through 5. On page 24, that's a support information. Goal 8 addresses our middle grades. Goal 9 takes on high school from an overall perspective of kids receiving or young adults receiving the necessary credits for graduation. And being at grade level classification. That goal came specifically from the 6 high school principals. So
And
in
that
other words,
translates into, if I've been in high school 2 years, I'm going to, at the end of 2 years, I will have successfully completed enough credits to qualify as a junior for the next year. Yeah.
Yes. And the final goal really addresses, it was created to help address literacy in fine and performing arts. Grammatical error has been addressed. Trying to include the perspective that our fine and performing arts are not an add-on. They actually are a content. That's also language that is being utilized and steered towards for our world language as well. But I was limited to 10 slots on goals right now with the state.
And how would this be measured?
That's why I actually had that language.
That question, yeah.
So when we started looking at it, I threw this question actually to a few art teachers as well. What came best were two things: student continuum to higher level of artwork. So we start, at basic drawing, but how many kids are really continuing in the arts as a senior, right? So looking at that continuum of students, also looking at the size, for example, of a marching band. Right, building that capacity. We have one school with an enormous marching band, another one with 21 students, let's say. The growth within the population and student involvement, those were areas that the art teachers felt that and performing art teachers felt that could be reflective, as well as the students involved in programs after school. Getting that data, looking and seeing of the growth of student involvement in programs on a campus.
Okay, yeah.
So can I pop in just a real quick question? Do we have, these after school programs, are those run by the district you're talking about? Are those something that, okay.
Yes, ma'am. But looking at marching band, drama, theater, chorus, yes. To see how they're growing over a period of time.
Well, from the ones I know about, the growth should be dramatic since I don't know of many. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
There are programs.
Is there a plan to hire an art director or art coordinator? Or do we have one? That's been on the burner for 2 or 3 years, and seemed to me to be an easier direction if we had someone who's monitoring all these things and specializing in growing of the art. Someone who's familiar with the art enough.
So, Mr. Campbell, the answer to that is absolutely yes.
We hired someone.
No, we had a point of it being advertised to the public.
I just picked the question that I put the yes to. I asked a lot of questions.
Yes, sir.
So.
Yes, sir. We are seeking to hire. The position would have been actually put out in advertisement. When I checked prior to our meeting today, it hadn't been posted to the public yet, only because people didn't realize that the internet came back on at about 3:45.
Okay.
So everything has been set up. It has been approved. We have a general fund position, as well as to our magnet schools program. There'll be another arts person who'll be focused in that domain for the med tech and art integrated 7 schools.
Okay. That's reassuring.
I agree with you.
One other thing as a proxy for success in arts would be increase in attendance. I don't know, because that's one of the big upsides to art programs is they increase student attendance.
And decrease discipline. Yes, yeah. So we tag the students over a period of time. We could use that as a measure. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Actually, and I don't know if Ms. McKinsey's still on because I saw she froze up earlier, but she has already started reaching out to community groups in the art circle to increase our partnerships. So,
hey, 2 birds, 1 stone.
Well, yes,
yeah, we already have set up a few possible connections for next year and working on expanding some of the ones that we had existing. So putting them in more schools. So we're excited about that. And there's one more that I made the contact this morning, so we'll get them.
As well as the one that we're looking to have a school, the exhibition. I believe you met with them. So
Yes.
We're trying to replicate what I had done at the Norton Museum in West Palm Beach of student exposition, making that an exhibition night. So, and I apologize, Karen, if you remember the group who you met with for me.
That was
This
the Art
group?
Center of Coastal Carolina, met
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
They used
that
to
was
have
one
an
of
art
them.
exhibition like 5 years ago. They did a student art exhibition.
And she,
They're looking at another one, and I also have had 2 requests from different organizations. One in the Hilton Head area and one in Beaufort, asking if we would be willing to allow them to display some of our student art at things that they have going on. So that's also something I'm working on.
Sorry, that's getting off topic. I was just
good to get
wanted
those
to
students that opportunity to display some work.
Mr. Smith?
Oh, thank you. Thought you forgot about me. My question goes along the lines of when it comes to the after school programs or the Alliance the after school tutoring. How are we getting that towards the arts? Speaking of, when in terms of student athletes and kids with maybe be below the 2.0 or have a 2.0. How are we tying that in any with the with the arts and and basically study halls?
well, Mr. Smith, actually, the funding request for after-school activities is not just focused at the elementary. It actually is in the area where you're driving your communication to be inclusive of our students after school for the arts funding. If we put a goal to help develop, the goal is separate from the theater group, but are we actually doing, because most high schools, have a theater, chorus, marching band, teachers receive a stipend for that. Ultimately, I'd like to see that we have more programs and that we're able to support those programs and provide stipends to our educators. So that's one of the unique items with a broad budget, how it is written, so that if we have certain requests coming from schools, we have support through ESSER and through approved goals that have gone to the state, that we can actually pay some support for programs that are after school. The study hall model, that I think that's something that was discussed with the shift on the 1.0 GPA, that model is coming from the athletic directors at the schools, and there's a monitoring process put in place. But I do want to share that one of the items we are also doing that we haven't done in the past is actually building back onto that language of stipends, our Model UN, our youth and government, our academic programs, trying to give stipends to these teachers who actually put a lot of hours in and hadn't been recognized in the past. So I'm trying to broaden that scope to a little more incentive for the educators as well, and for greater outcomes for our students.
Right. Also, let me ask this also as well another way. At the district level, how are we monitoring the athletic study halls?
We haven't had, I believe that came out from conversation at a prior board meeting that was presented. I don't recall if it was the last or the second from the last board meeting, that's going to be put in place by our athletic directors. So I don't have that information beyond that. That was tied to the proposal for the requirement with shifting the amendment to the GPA. I don't have anything beyond that at this time, sir. It wasn't part of this because that athletic component was separate from.
Okay. Well, I was just tying it in with after school programs because I kind of look at that as in one of the after school programs. Whether it's it's the arts is still kind of an after school program. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Dr. Stratos, continue. We're almost we're getting down to the end of time here, so.
So if you see page 30, it's just a reference of some of the data that was utilized, and I know you're familiar with the data. It is college or career readiness, It was projected data from NWEA that has already been shared with the board. Just was an example of a data point that was utilized. Excuse me, I apologize. And if you see page 31, that was an initial discussion of having, as we were working through this was a spreadsheet design at. If you look at the first column is district initiatives, then we started looking at what are we providing. And then it actually was designed to identify tier 1, 2, and 3. And you've seen that in the presentation was when it was just a simpler graphic. This just gives a little more information to some of the programs. What you see in yellow were proposed ideas. For example, the board was gracious at supporting the Scholastic Initiative. There has been discussion for class size reduction. That's in our ESSER, extended learning days, instructional coaches, and that was at the elementary. We looked at the middle area. Those are the middle school. Again, the yellow areas, looking at the same scenarios of support and providing the same support to high schools as well, who are in the tier 3. And I kind of did walk through this at a prior board presentation, but this was what it looked like in Excel. And it was just part of our package that I turned into Tanya Crosby, because Tanya has been working cross-checking initiatives back and forth to assure that they're in the grant. And what I will do is provide feedback to Tanya from our meeting today regarding some input on a broader perspective. Also addressing the question from Mrs. Friedrich and how to prove the effectiveness of coaches making a difference, and how we could prove that. Great.
Okay, any other questions? I think that we've lost Mr. Mel Campbell. He seems to be gone. So at this point, Dr. Stratos, I thank you for the presentation. And as we spoke earlier, this was going to be part of the presentation under the superintendent's report. So it will be shown again on Tuesday, August 3rd, I believe is our next meeting. So I will, since Ms. Middleton was not with us today, and since Mel Campbell has dropped off, I will not set the next meeting of the academic committee because I need to check with them, with their calendars. And does, I know we also, is Ms. Cartledge still on? Are there any ARs, Ms. Cartledge? We have the one that was, or the SS something that's still hanging out there. Yes. That needs to be brought back to the board. So anybody have anything they'd like to say before we call it a night?
Miss
Yes.
Rubin, I'm sorry, I had a little trouble with the phone. Yeah,
Okay.
we did make the changes to SS3, and one of the other items that needs to be updated is in the student code of conduct. Dr. Stratus is aware of this. There have been 2 new definitions added. One is for sexting, and one, it's been an updated definition. Also, we have a new definition for paraphernalia, and there are some other edits for the student code of conduct, so we'll need to present those.
Okay, so the SS3, I think, just goes back to the full board because it's been here already. And
yes,
then
okay, yeah, that would be fine.
The student code of conduct can come here first. And as I said earlier, since the rest of the committee is not here, I'll refrain from setting the next meeting. We usually meet, I think, the last Wednesday of the month. And this time it's August 25th, and I'm unavailable that day, so I will have to check with my committee members to see if we can do it a different time.
And Miss Robine and Dr. Stratus, now that Karen McKenzie's with the district, and she did mention about working with physical education and about social studies, I'd like to look at those administrative regulations with her and make some revisions to those.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So at this time, I will look one more time. I don't see any hands. So at this time, we will adjourn. And Molly, I will get with Robin to look for a calendar date and my other committee members. Thank you, everyone, for participating
Thank you.
today. Appreciate it.